Welcome to the Falls Count Everywhere podcast. Before we begin tonight's show, don't forget our friends at the following: the Searcher and Hide podcast, for mind intriguing discussions about wrestling, movies, Bigfoot, aliens, and everything in between. Then look no further than the Searcher and Hide podcast. You can find the Searcher and Hide podcast on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many other platforms. Go check them out today. And Outside the Ring STL, join Shaft and General Vader as they talk about the recent shows from the major wrestling companies, all independent promotions from around the St. Louis area, and even talk about great moments in St. Louis professional wrestling history. Find them on Facebook at Outside the Ring STL. Get ready for episode number 52 of the Falls Count Everywhere podcast as we welcome award-winning producer, author, and sports historian, Ed Wheatley. We thank all of you joining us for tonight's episode of the Falls Count Everywhere podcast. Before we get underway, we pay honor, tribute, and respect to the greatest nation in the world as we play our national anthem.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight for that ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets right glare, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free? And the home of the brave.
Yeah, we are live, everybody. Welcome to episode number 52 of the Falls Count Everywhere podcast. I am one of your hosts here, Rough Cut Rick Ruby. Hopefully you had a great month of September as we're getting right into the fall weather, and I can't be more excited for what's upcoming here for this evening, as we do have coming up here in just a couple moments. We will have our featured guest, the author of the brand new book, Wrestling at the Chase, none other than Ed Wheatley. And my sidekick, of course, to my left and your right is none other than Z-Miz. And what's going on, buddy? I think you're still muted there. So,
my bad.
See, that's a good thing about these name bubbles here, because I can actually see that microphone with the slash in it. I'm like, I hope he's not trying to talk while that's on. So
Well, when we cut from the studio to here, like, to recording, you didn't hit my mute thing, so I hit it for you. You must have hit it afterwards. So
Yeah, I must have. Yeah, I must have.
I'm trying to do too much.
Yeah, we always try to do too much, man. We always do. We've just got a lot going on, and we'll talk about here that in a moment because we're just ending September. We've got a big show. We've got a big month in October going up, at least around the St. Louis area. At least it's going to be busy for me for a lot of reasons. And I'll tell you what, I have my show in American Championship Wrestling, and tell you what, I think I narrowly escaped from fracturing my hip this past weekend. That's a long story going into that, but thank God I'm kind of walking around a little bit better now, and getting on some medicine, and I can't wait to get things going next week, man. So how's your week? How's your week been, man?
We had a great weekend camping with the kids for scouts and stuff, and I just kind of chilled out and relaxed. I wish I could have been at the IEW show in Jacksonville. That would have been awesome, but hey, things happen. Family first. Yeah,
I hear you, man. Yeah, and yeah, so a lot of things happening over the weekend. I think maybe one other promotion had their show as well. But we're going to go ahead and, like I said, we've got a lot of things. We'll wind up what we got here in October so far. And we're going to go ahead and get onto that here. Just want to choose and get my share option to go. Here we go. I would like to share a window, people. Thank you. Do you mind? I think they do mind. Oh, no, here we go. Okay. So here we go for upcoming shows around this area. And once again, I mean, if anybody else, other promotions that are around the area, definitely let us know what you're doing, and we'll clue you in here. But this coming Saturday, October 2nd, is Pro Wrestling Epic at the Franklin Lodge at Alton, Illinois. We got a great one of the big main events today is a women's triple threat with Melanie Cruz versus Allison Kay, which is one half of the NWA Women's Tag Team Champions, and also Camille, who's also the NWA World Champion. Yeah, gosh, yeah. That's a blockbuster event. It's just got a 30-minute drive from me. General admission is $15, front row is $20. Bell time is at 5:30. Doors open at 5. Check out Pro Wrestling Epic on Facebook for more information on that show. And here we go. IEW, Illinois Elite Wrestling, on Saturday, October 9th, back in Grant City at the Elks Lodge. Gates open at 5, bells at 6. Advanced tickets are $10 for adults, $12 at the door. All kids at $5. 5 and under are free. Great lineup. That will soon be announced. Follow Illinois Elite Wrestling on Facebook.
I plan on being there.
Yeah, there you go. You'll be there and
behind my booth.
There you go. But down the road a little bit, which is where I'll be at. Actually, it's not down the road. It's kind of another part here. But October 9th, SICW returns to the Swansea Firehouse at the Swansea Fire Station for a big fundraiser. I think this is the 8th year going on right now. 2 Cold Scorpio will be in the house, and his announced opponent is none other than Superstar Steve Fender. That will be one of the featured matches for the evening. Tickets are $15 for adults, $8 for kids, 12 and under. Doors open at 6. Bell time is at 7 o'clock. And then was SICW on Saturday, October 16th, back at East Carondelet Community Center. The feature match of the evening will be one half of the former tag team champions, Gil Rogers, facing Attila Khan with Travis Cook in his corner. Visit sicw.org for ticket information. Also, you can reserve your seats at 618-286-4848. And if you go to that show, keep your stub, because the following day, on Sunday the 17th, is the TV taping for SICW All-Star Wrestling. And make sure that you want to. Those are some fun shows. Not because I sit there and I wait to beat people up, but it's always a good time when you're down at SICW. Now we switch gears to WPW on Saturday, October 23rd, down in Jerseyville, Illinois, at the Susnick Center. This is Combat Games, and this will be, I guess, kind of like a War Games type of style match. the Skull Canyon match or Skull Canyon barbed wire cage is like retired now, so I don't know what they're going to do. But trust me, that I was the last one. I was in that last match, and I pricked my fingers pretty good and was bleeding. And trust me, it's not barb friendly at all. I might as well just have razor wire in there, you know. I poked my finger and I cried like a kid. So all tickets are just $5 down at this show, so you can't beat it. And here we go. At the end of the Saturday, October 30th, this is one of the feature matches for SICW. Ming or King Haku is going to be facing Attila Khan.
Oh my God, that match is going to be awesome.
Yeah. Belclair Fairgrounds. That's just one of the big matches lined up. There's going to be more matches announced along the way, but that is the big one there. And also, not to mention the 20-man 2-ring over-the-top battle royal for the winner will be crowned the new SICW Central States champion. And that bell time is at 7, but festivities will start at 4 o'clock with a trunk or treat for the kids. And you get to meet all these guys. Look at all these guys. Jerry the King Lawler, Demolition, Sergeant Slaughter, like I said, Ming or King Haku, Cowboy Bob Orton Jr., the head of the Ace Wrestling Academy, Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson, the Rock and Roll Express. You got Greg the Hammer Valentine, the Nasty Boys, and the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. And I think there was one that just got added on, and I just can't remember the top of my head. So there might be like 13 legends here for this big event. You do not want to miss it. It's probably the biggest show of the year when it comes to legends, all under one roof. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be a good time. And I tell you what, I'm stoked about it because I'm going to be part of all of that. And so, man, it's just a lot of good stuff there, Z-Miz. I mean, yeah. What do you do?
I'm thinking about bringing the family down, hopefully, if we can figure out how to stem the cash to make it down there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right. Thank you very much, Jessica. That's right. The man himself, Dr. D. David Schultz. And if you've done your history in the 80s, this is the guy that you don't want to ask if wrestling is fake, and he'll pop you right across your ear.
Yeah, he'll smack
you. Knock you silly. Yeah, so there are 13 legends. Dr. D. David Schultz will be in the house there. So, man.
It looks like the chats. We got a lot of people going to be there for this one.
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, tickets are going to, trust me, it's a big house, but trust me, a lot of people are going to want to come down, and that house could get crowded. But, hey, don't hold back from trying to come down, because you do not, especially with all these legends, WWE Hall of Famers. I mean, gosh, at least 4 or maybe 6 I can count right offhand that are going to be in the house, And but no, man, we'll talk about that in weeks to come. But man, I'm stoked about tonight. I don't know about you, man. I really am.
I actually did a lot of research on this gentleman that we have on Mr. Ed here. I'm really pumped.
Oh yeah. I really am too, man. I think we shouldn't wait no longer, and let's go and get into to our featured guest of the evening, who's been involved in the world of sports at a very young age. His sports first love helped him through co-authoring 1 book and authoring 2 of his own, which led to nationally accredited award-winning film documentaries. Tonight, we reflect on him, on those achievements, and talk about his newest book, just recently released, on one of the greatest professional wrestling eras of all time. Ladies and gentlemen of the Falls Count Everywhere Nation, put your hands together for author, executive producer, and sports historian, Ed Wheatley.
Thanks, guys. Good to be here.
Ed, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Doing very well. Very well.
Man, I tell you what. Yeah, like I said, Z-Miz has been reading some stuff about you, and I've been doing my little research too. And but your first really involvement is with, being in with the Browns, and I'm thinking, well, man, why the Browns didn't get such a good run, and why were they out of St. Louis? And something tells me they weren't really that spectacular of a team. 44 was their best year.
Well, the best year, was 1944, of course, because they made it to the World Series and they played the Cardinals. Both teams were in the World Series in 1944 from St. Louis, and the 1922 team with George Sisler was one of the greatest. They were just a team of hard luck. I mean, if you study their history and they go down the roads, and you could take the right road or the left road, it seemed they always took the wrong road. Luck was never on their side. They're one game away from winning the pennant in 22. George Sisler, who's only hitting 420 plus, he got hurt two weeks earlier, and they lose by one game to the Yankees last day of the season. I mean, it's that type of thing. Their owner dies. It gets thrown into receivership with a bunch of lawyers, and they really didn't know anything about baseball, and they kind of messed it up for quite a few. It's just one of these things that, man, so many things could have been, but never were.
All right, yeah. And like I said, they did as best they could for 44, but then I know they got swept by the Cardinals. So
they didn't get swept. They didn't get swept.
Oh, they didn't?
No, they won the first game. They should have won the second game. They were winning, and the pitcher made on a bunt, a wild throw, kind of like Carlos Martinez, throws the ball instead of the first base into the right field corner. Cardinals come back and win. Browns win the third game. Browns could have been up 3-0, 3 games to zip. But eventually, the Cardinals had been in the World Series in 42 and 43 and were led by MVP, all Hall of Famer Stan Musial, and they were just too much for the Browns at the end of the day.
Yeah. So, Stan the Man, one of the great legends in all of Cardinal history, and my father's favorite player of all time. Stan was just a great guy to meet and for the
Real
kids.
Gentleman.
Yeah, he was nothing but a gentleman to all the kids that came down to the ballpark, and just an awesome individual. But man, just a little bit background about you. But you are the president of the St. Louis Browns Historical Society,
Right.
Which of course that club was founded back in 1984 by Bill Borst, who was the first president. Right.
We got over 700 members across the nation. We have our annual luncheon coming up on November 3rd at the Missouri Athletic Club, and we usually have over 400 people come. Now, do you believe that a team hasn't played in 68 years, and we still get over 400 people coming to the luncheons to remember them and talk? And,
Wow.
The Brooklyn Dodgers don't have a fan club. The Philadelphia Athletics don't have a fan club. The Boston Braves. What is it about the St. Louis Browns?
Man, I think it's just St. Louis is just really rich in history, and I think a lot of it had to kick off after the 1904 World's Fair, at least I think in my book.
Well, I mean, people don't realize the Corey League, which is was in all 50 states and other countries, was founded in St. Louis in 1934, still headquartered here. St. Louis had some of the best high school teams in the country, the best American Legion, the amateur, and that's why I wrote the one book, Baseball in St. Louis, Little Leagues to Major Leagues, just about this rich amateur history, which makes St. Louis probably the best baseball town in America.
Oh yeah, I think without a doubt. Obviously, Cardinals second in World Series championships to the Yankees, but Yankees throw their money around just try to out all-star everybody every season. It seems like,
Right.
you had your love for the game very early, but some people may not know that for like 36 years you were like you had a business career.
Yeah.
Last I saw you were with your last job, you were like an engineer for a telecommunications company, I should say.
Yeah, I was an executive there at AT&T, the old Southwestern Bell, for 36 years. I still play baseball, about 100 plus baseball games in senior leagues across the country. But I grew up in baseball. My father played professional baseball. So, it was somewhere to take this passion afterwards. And I took it back into baseball and revived the Browns fan club and started writing these books. They led to movies. They led to, the Browns book was the best book published on baseball in 2017. Baseball in St. Louis was picked as top 25 books of 2020 by the Post-Dispatch. We've won EMMY Awards for our show on PBS on baseball and the Browns. But, that history of baseball, there is this dramatic history of wrestling in St. Louis. And that, came to me during the pandemic on another project I was working on, and all the libraries and research centers were closing down and the archives. And, my coffee table type books, I like a book filled with pictures, about 400, 500, 700 pictures in a book where the stories are told with pictures and words. And Larry Matisek had written a book on the wrestling at the Chase in the early 2000s. And it was just a collection of his stories in the game of wrestling. And Larry always wanted to do a coffee table book, take people back to this grand time of St. Louis. St. Louis was the wrestling capital of the world, with Sam Muchnick here in St. Louis. It all came through here, and just to quote, they every one of these wrestlers I engaged, this is the book. And we'll talk about where you can get it. I mean, this is if you're into wrestling, this is the Christmas present for everyone, But this book, Larry wanted to do a coffee table book. And, everyone, Ric Flair, here's a quote that he provided back. In the year 1978, Terry Funk told me if I wanted to be a star in this business, I had to get to St. Louis on Friday night. You know what I'm talking about. I had to be at the Kiel or the Arena. I had to be live at the Chase. I had to be in St. Louis if I wanted to be a star. I mean, that's the same thing. Baron von Raschke, Cowboy Bob Orton, Jerry Briscoe. They all say you had to get into St. Louis. And because Sam was here, and even though you had the other 32 territories of the NWA, St. Louis was the place to be. And to get on that special television show, Wrestling at the Chase, all this that we see in wrestling today on television, the WWE, Vince McMahon, it's all because of Sam Muchnick. And that's the story here.
Oh, yeah. Because when you really think about that, with the Chase starting in 59, I literally have to try to dig in the archives when the WWF started back up in the Northeast, because this is arguably, at least in my opinion, that the Wrestling Match Chase era in the NWA here in St. Louis, I think, is probably one of the biggest and most influential wrestling capitals in U.S. history.
Well, yeah, Vince McMahon's father ran one of the territories up in the Northeast, as you just spoke, and it is as Sam started retiring, headed toward retirement in 1982. It was also a time of change. Wrestling goes through this, and I tell about this history in this book. And again, just to see some pictures as you're scrolling how to get the book. I told you I like to do coffee table style pictures, and it's just this book is full of the pictures that tell the story for you, the viewers. I go back to wrestling. I give the history. It began with cavemen. You go into these cavemen, and you find the depictions of wrestling. You go into Egyptian tombs, you find depictions of wrestling. You go into Babylonia mosaics from Babylonia, there's wrestling. You go into the Bible, in Genesis, you'll see Isaiah wrestling. And same in the Quran with the Prophet Muhammad. But about the Greek and the Romans and the Olympics and how they had Greco-Roman wrestling. But did you know the first time the Olympics had freestyle wrestling? 1904, just across the street from the Chase in Forest Park, where the World's Fair and the Olympics were held at Washington U. How ironic is that? Is that tell you something special?
Yeah, it's sacred ground. Around that area, with Forest Park and the Chase and everything else. Because with the 1904 with the World's Fair, and then with wrestling happening there, and like I said, when you mentioned, wrestling is literally one of the oldest sports of all time.
It is, and that's what they said. The oldest non-racing sport. And then the 20s came along. First time more people in America lived in cities than on farms. And entertainment, vaudeville, the Roaring 20s came. They wanted that fast action, and that's how wrestling evolved into the action that we would know from the 20s, 30s, 40s. That then came in with the NWA and Sam Muchnick putting it all together. And for the next 30 years, he ruled. And then you came, in the 80s when cable TV came in, video games, all this pace of action and, a lot of distortion away from the ring. Pay-per-view came, and that's what Vince McMahon took the handoff from Muchnick and, evolved into the WWF at that time, now the WWE. But, I mean, wrestling, this picture here, I think, tells it all. Look at this. This is Kiel Auditorium.
Yeah.
In 1948. Sold out crowds. And you got to remember, there wasn't that much type of entertainment. But look at all these people, and, the faces just staring at this Sam Muchnick production. This is the world coming to St. Louis for professional wrestling. And that's what this history is about.
Yeah, I mean, gathering all these great photos. I mean, like I said, and just with the work that you've done, also with the Browns. I mean, and then after your career, I was just kind of wanting to know what point in your life did you decide that you were going to go become a sports historian, and what does one do in order to become a master in that profession?
Well, you got to have a lot of luck and a lot of hard work. I mean, I have a lot of graduate degrees, that help provide me the background on how to write this and, to do it what I want. I grew up in the world of baseball, as I spoke. My father played and I played, so my whole life was around. And a lot of these former players with the Yankees, the Browns and things, I knew growing up. I did a lot of bat boying for them. And so it was just kind of a transition of a love, a background, and, a lot of hard work putting this together. To me, as I took over in my retirement, I took over this Browns Historical Society and fan club and this whole membership. I said, I'm going to energize this crowd. Now, I said, I'm going to do it by writing this book. So, I led this effort and wrote this book. Did I foresee that it would, get these recognitions as the best book published in baseball or soon lead into these Emmy-winning movies? No. But it then led to all these other books. And, now it takes a turn. Somebody says, I love your work. Relive and we want to preserve the history, just like we preserve the Browns. I don't think people remember the Philadelphia Athletics or the Boston Braves like they do the Browns since we've been doing this the last 5 years. And I don't want people to forget wrestling at the Chase. I mean, this was a simple time. This was a time that was so special because, when it premiered in 1959, most people only had one television set in their household, this big wooden box with a tiny little picture, rabbit ears on the top. Some people would put aluminum foil between them thinking they'd get better. And there was only 3 channels on television before Channel 11 came up on the air in St. Louis. So you had limited entertainment. So on Saturday nights, sometimes Sunday morning, we hear that all the time. I had to get up real early on Sunday to go early church so we could be back home so my dad or mom or grandma could watch wrestling at the Chase. I never got to sleep late. But it was the whole family who bonded around this program. Not only was it a love of wrestling, but you had this special time with special relatives and these special memories. Sometimes those memories are, you really thought you could do an atomic drop like Dick the Bruiser or something, and you did it on your brother, and the next thing you know, your mom's screaming at you. You wrecked the coffee table or broke a lamp, or I heard so many people put their fist through a wall. These are the memories. I mean, I tell everybody whenever interviewed, 4 words can stop a person and send them back to this happy time of memories, and they'll tell you a story for 5 or 10 minutes. Those 4 words: wrestling at the Chase. Just walk around, say it to somebody, their eyes will light up, and they will tell you a story of happiness.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm just excited here. I think I might have, with everything here, I don't want to cut off Z here because I know he's trying.
I mean, I've been listening to you guys this whole time, and I went ahead and did some research real quick. Vince McMahon, Vince's dad, started Capital Wrestling Corporation in 1953, became WWF in 1963. 1979 is when it became WWF. So,
wow.
And and the thing of it too about this thing about the chase that people, if you go back and watch these tapes, first of all, the Chase Park Plaza was the most opulent hotel in St. Louis and one of the most opulent in the country. I mean, it was Sam Coppler built it to look like the Savoy Plaza on Central Park, and here this corner of Lindo Kings Highway on Forest Park, and inside in the Coruscant room where all the swells of society would have their veil prophet balls and proms or the Muni Opera black tie dinners. All of a sudden, under these grand chandeliers, wrestlers are wrestling. They're not in some dark, dank arena. They're in this opulent ballroom. And the men and women would come. The women would be in evening gowns. And look at the film, evening gloves, the evening gloves up to here. Look at these people. Now, they would get a little spritz of spit or, something, sweat on them. But they loved it. And I talk about it. There was one referee, I can't remember his name right now. I found a clipping in the newspaper how he said, I've given up on women. They are the most ruthless, bloodthirsty, screaming for blood. And all of a sudden you start going back at these films, and who do you hear the loudest are women. It's amazing. And it was a time Joe Garagiola was the first announcer of Wrestling at the Chase for several years before he went to New York for the Today Show and then on to the baseball game of the week. He lived down Kings Highway, just a little over a mile from the Chase, and he and his family were always driving by. And it was like, oh, if we could only win the lottery, maybe we could go in the Chase, because that's where the Chase was the place. All the presidents, kings, queens, all the big stars. The Chase Club was one of the top 5 cabaret nightclubs in the country. Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Nat King Cole, Rosemary Clooney, they all played there. But the hottest ticket was not Frank Sinatra. The hottest ticket was when you call your girlfriend and say, hey, babe, I got tickets to the Chase tonight. Get dressed. We're going. She might think she's seeing Frank Sinatra. No, she's going to Wrestling at the Chase. That was the ticket. And, Saturday night, you remember back in the 80s when it was, or 90s, whatever it was, must-see TV on NBC with Seinfeld and all that. Must-see TV was Wrestling at the Chase. Only the St. Louis Cardinals and the local news had higher viewership than Wrestling at the Chase. It was that type of a program. And all of a sudden, all the swells ringside, everybody is now invited on Saturday night into the Chase, side by side, watching it and loving it. And that's what we record.
That's awesome. Like, man, I wish I could have lived that era. Like, I'm such a wrestling addict. And, I've seen a lot of the Wrestling of the Chase videos and went back and watched stuff. But, man, I really wish I could have lived that era and felt that energy and that just aurora that
it was a totally different era than what you see now, because Muchnick, it was real beat. These guys were all athletes. I mean, we got pictures how they all played college football. Someone played in the NFL. It was just an amazing time. And what you would swear they're fighting to the death there, and that's what Muchnick wanted you to see and believe. And these people, there was a lady, and she was what you'd call a groupie. They call her wrestling rats. She had this red beehive hairdo, red. And she would get there early. The tickets were free, but it was like Saturday Night Live today. You had to put your name in and hope you get tickets, but somehow she always had a ticket. And she was sitting there just banging on the edge of the mat or banging with her rubber chicken. I mean, the wrestlers either loved her or they hated her. Dick Murdoch could not stand her. And he was giving her just trouble all the time. People actually thought she was part of the show. No, she was a loner. She was there by herself. it was that passion, that love, and that belief that this was all about.
Back then in that era, fans were up right at ringside. To me, as a wrestler, even going back then, I would never let a fan get right there, because it's just like, you say something to a fan who's really get easily agitated, they're going to crawl in there, and then you're going to have to old school somebody.
I mean, this is definitely old school. I mean, I was talking about Dick the Bruiser. Here's a picture of Dick the Bruiser. Let's see if I can get it good here. He's number 72 right there in the middle. The big guy in the middle row, the middle. That's Dick the Bruiser when he played 3 years for the Green Bay Packers. Number 72.
Massive, oh, my Lord.
Massive compared to all the other players. And that's the quality and type of wrestlers that we were looking. The physicality was just unbelievable, And, it was it just set so many tenures for what was to come. One of the great stories I got there, and this is just so many stories. If we got time for a quick story. We all know about Muhammad Ali, right? Yeah, I'm the greatest,
One of the best.
You fool, you can't beat me. If you get me, I'll crawl across the ring and kiss your feet. You know where he learned that from? He was Cassius Clay. He just won the 1960 gold medal Olympics. He was in Las Vegas. And he was at a wrestling match with Gorgeous George. And he went backstage after the match, after watching Gorgeous George pull all that stuff. And Gorgeous George told young Cassius Clay, this is the shtick you need to do. You do this, you will be the greatest. And Cassius Clay fell in love with Gorgeous George's wrestling shtick. And that's what he brought to the boxing ring. I mean, these are the incredible stories that, I dug out, these nuggets, and the book is filled with.
Oh my gosh, yeah. When you throw out Gorgeous George, I mean, this is a guy that mastered as a heel in the golden era.
Oh yeah.
I mean, pursued arrogance. People just couldn't stand him because he was just so arrogant. And he
had the big blonde hair. He had this big purple robe, and they would put Pomp and Circumstances on the loudspeakers, and he would come down strutting in with his beautiful women at his beckon along the way, making this grand entrance, getting hissed at, and he's giving it back. I mean, and it's the same thing Ali would do 20 years later.
Oh yeah. Well, Ali was a talker, but I could see that for real. Getting some pointers from Gorgeous George, and because Ali was probably the most colorful guys, to ever be behind the mic, as a boxer.
Right.
And, oh my goodness. So, oh my goodness. So,
but we go through all the different wrestlers, the different special, their holds. We got some trivia questions about them on what they did on Wrestling at the Chase. But we give bios of all that. We got the history of wrestling. We got the story of the Chase, the story how Channel 11 came to be the fourth station, and how it actually started with Sam Muchnick and Harold Koppler. Harold Koppler owned the Chase, and he was brought on this new television station. They were sitting next to each other, and at a television station programming. Had a bunch of wrestlers was looking to bring wrestling back up. It was a marriage. I call the airplane flight and engagement. The 30 years of Wrestling at the Chase was the marriage.
Oh yeah. I'm sure you go all the way when you go back in the book. You talk about that infamous playwriting between Sam and Mr. Koppler, getting all this gel together to ready to start. Who would ever thought that it would go so long and make such an impact, not only just in the world of professional wrestling, but in St. Louis, for making it another landmark and something, a talking point for the gateway to the West.
Across the whole region, it was broadcast pretty far. I mean, and there's like really 3 delineations of the program. You start with Lou Thez and Pat O'Connor, some of the greatest. Buddy Rogers, and then it kind of migrates to the next decade with Dick the Bruiser, Cowboy Bob Ellis, the Funks, the Von Erichs. and then it goes to the next one era with King Kong, Brody, Ric Flair. So there's this transition of wrestling history that takes place here at the Chase.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And that's what we fill in with stories and pictures. The book is.
Oh yeah, and trust me, we're going to get to some of that here in a little bit here. Z, wanted to kind of ask Z here. Z, do you got the question list that yeah, and all that? I tried sending you a message here. Go ahead and just go to 4. We're going to kind of skip over 5 here because I think we kind of covered that. But, yeah, but that's fine, man. I mean, we're doing everything on the fly here. I mean, because we're just excited about talking about this book. I mean, when we're talking about wrestling history, I'm a big fan of history in sports, and especially when it comes to the sport I've been involved with for near 25 years now. So, I'm just excited for it. So,
well, you don't realize how big it was today, because today you have the distractions. When wrestling was evolving in a king in the late 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the NHL was not really not even in an infancy, really. The NFL doesn't really come to be, that the big merger that created the NFL was 1966. The NBA only had a few teams, few cities. Wrestling was king. There was more television revenue in the 50s from wrestling than any other sport.
I believe it.
That's how much it was loved and how big it really was.
Yeah.
Did you see Herb's statement there?
Oh.
No better thing to talk about than wrestling at the Chase. He's right. And if you talk to Herb Simmons, and I know both you gentlemen have talked to him, I've talked to him, that man will talk your ears off about wrestling for like 4 hours.
Well, he's been talking my ear off for the last year and a half as I was putting this book together, and he was a big part of providing insights and information and pictures.
Oh, so, man.
You got to grow up in the great era of the wrestling of the Chase. What memories or things come to your mind when you think of that and sitting down by the TV? You've already talked about kind of how the family got around and everything. What was that really like to you for that era?
Well, it was for me and all the stories, because one part of the book is everybody's stories, but for me, it was like my grandmother loved it. And again, you got to remember, there was only 4 channels, so you didn't have a lot to choose from, but you resonated back to it. And every Saturday night when I was with her, she would make root beer floats, vanilla ice cream, Dad's root beer.
Oh, God, I love this.
And so that, that becomes an instant memory, even when you think about them. But other people, there's a gentleman, restaurateur from the Hill here in St. Louis. He talks about his grandmother. She was from Italy, could speak very little English, and she lived with him. She was 90 years old. Saturday night, they had a luxury. She had her own television when she moved in there, and she'd be out with the family. But wrestling at Chase time came. You guys stay out here. She goes into her own room. She's watching the program, and in her bedroom, you hear all this screaming and cursing in Italian and banging. Emil, go check on your grandma. Opens the door. She's on all 4 knees counting out with the referee. 90-year-old lady.
That sounds like my great grandmother, actually.
Yeah. There was, you stay away from her. She knows the hold. I mean, some of them would be like, grandma. There was a lot of grandma stories in there. Sunday morning, she'd watch it on Saturdays. Then here comes Sunday morning. You watching Cowboy Bob Orton. The last time he got you, he came around. He's doing it again. He's doing it just like the last time. It was a repeat of last night's show, or you would, a friend of mine, he lived up about 80 miles northeast of St. Louis and over in Illinois. And they would have their outside. Remember, you used to have the old antennas on the outside, pre-cable and all this. Well, their cable was turned to Champaign-Urbana to get a better picture of, in the old days with the rabbit ear antennas. Well, there was a ritual every Saturday night. The brother, he or his brother, somebody had to take the pliers, go out and turn the antenna to St. Louis so Grandpa could watch wrestling at the Chase. So, everybody, as I said, they've got a story, and I was grabbing them and recording them. And I mean, they're just precious memories that for you personally, but also the city, the sport, and everything keeps it together.
Yeah.
And ours was Orange Crushes. My great grandmother and I would have Orange Crushes while we watched wrestling. So that's where my love with my father and my great grandmother.
All right, Rick, what was yours? You got anything?
Oh man. I'll tell you what, I caught like when the chase ended, I was like 8.5. So I barely got into wrestling, maybe seen it periodically. My story is that because literally at the church I was going to at the time, there was like a it was like 3 floors of the church, and in the middle floor, like in one of the classrooms, they did have a TV in there with rabbit ears, and they were flipping on between channel 11 and also channel 30. Right. So there were some people would actually play hooky from the sermons to go up into church to actually watch it. And I actually did it one time. I got by with it only twice, and when my dad caught me, it wasn't really good. But yeah, I remember though. I mean,
and it was that passion to watch this thing, and all these memories of how you watched it. It wasn't just what you watched, it's how you watched it.
Right, exactly. But yeah, I mean, I caught the chase toward the very end a few times at the end of the era, and listening to Larry Matisic, and calling the action, and and just it was wild, and especially with the shows coming down to the keel, mainly. Still after when Sam retired in '82, they were still trying to bring the shows. I think at that time they moved away from the Checker Dome and they moved to the keel.
Well, what happened was Sam Muchnick, really all his promotions generally were always at the keel.
Yeah.
And then when Sam broke away, Larry Matisic formed his own promotions, and he was trying to use the arena, and the St. Louis Wrestling Club that was Sam's old vintage was purchased by the Triumvirate, and they would continue at the keel, but eventually, Larry's promotions didn't pan out, and they started using the arena / Checker Dome during that faded period that the Ralston P. Arena owned the Blues and the arena, and they moved in because they could get more people in the place. That was the biggest place in those days.
Oh man. And but I'll tell you what, that place was packed on Sam's retirement show too.
Sold out, 19,000 plus.
Yeah.
And, we're making a film on this book that you'll see on the PBS network sometime in early 2022. And these clips that we're putting together, and you just see, as we spoke earlier about the passion of the people, but as you just spoke, how many people were there in this excitement, and this battle, as Bob Costas, told me, people came because it was entertainment. It was exciting. It was good versus evil, with generally good winning, and you went home with a smile, and that's what wrestling is, and that's what it was, in these glory days. And
man,
it was just an American
Too bad
dream.
I root for the heel.
I guess some people are naturally attracted from still being a heel.
Well, when you really look and go back at the history, like when I have the part that's about these individual wrestlers and such, many guys came in as the heel, and people were so behind them that they soon became a tweener, and some then became, a face. They would go back and forth. Some faces became heels, but you would see how they played with the crowds, and and many, many, many times that heel would be loved.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I always thought it was cut and dry when I first watched it. You're either good or you're bad, and of course, I always cheer for the good when I was a kid. I don't want to stay away from the bad. Even though I was, I was pretty bad. I was pretty bad in school, but still.
I'm not gonna lie. I was a Hulkamaniac as a kid and everything, but it was Roddy Piper and Cowboy Bob Orton Jr. that made me really fall in love with wrestling. And then I got to watch Ric Flair, and then it was over with. Like, if it wasn't for Cowboy and Piper, being the dirty jerks they were.
Well, you named a couple of legends. I'll give you a key. And next Wednesday night, we're doing a book signing event with Cowboy Bob Orton's going to be with me. And I will announce something here tonight that's never been announced yet, that on November 4th, we're going to his hometown, just outside St. Louis, Florissant, Missouri. We're going to have Bob Orton day. The mayor's going to declare Bob Orton, and we're going to have a big event at the Civic Center, an evening with Bob Orton. Bob Orton's dad, Bob Orton Sr., he was on the premiere episode of Wrestling at the Chase.
Wow.
And, and Bob Orton's, his son's going to be a big part of that WWE event on January 20th here. And next Wednesday night, Ric Flair's coming to Missouri Athletic Club, which sold out real quick as part of this book kickoff, and some SICW matches with Herb. We've got an evening there, and we've got many, many things. And we are, I'm in the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame. We are in early December. We'll be announcing in several weeks. We're going to have a special evening of wrestling with some SICW matches. Plus, we're going to bring in some of the men who wrestled on the program. And we're going to induct Sam Muchnick, Larry Matisek, and Mickey Garagiola, who we yet to talk about, and what a piece of the part of the show is. But all three of those men will be inducted into the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame that night.
Oh,
wow.
Excellent.
And you'll see more information on that in the coming weeks. It's for early December.
Yeah. Boy, tell you what a class of gentlemen. Just those three. That's I don't think you would need anybody else in that class. Those three guys did a lot for this area of Wrestling at the Chase.
Well, professional wrestling today would not be what it was without Sam Muchnick. Larry Matisek was one of the greatest announcers, and Mickey Garagiola. Joe is a big name, but the stories about Mickey is just unbelievable. And the book is filled with, sometimes he made a few gaffes. Declaring Ted DiBiase the world champion in a tag team match on Wrestling at the Chase. He was so excited. He ran into the ring and said, "The new heavyweight champion," and Harley races on no knees. No, it can't, he just got caught up. You talk about the passion, getting caught up. He was standing there waiting for the match to be over, and it happens. And there's all these little, Wrestling at the Chase was taped on Mondays.
Yeah.
Mickey Garagiola was like the chief head waiter at Ruggieri's. Saturday nights was his big night. Sam Muchnick said, "Hey, your brother Joe said I should call you, get you to be the ring announcer." And Mickey says, "Sam, I can't do it. Saturday night's my big night." And Sam says, "Didn't your brother tell you we tape it on Mondays?" And, no. So what Mickey would do on Saturday mornings, all these Italian older gentlemen would gather at this one gas station on the hill, sit around drinking coffee, smoking cigarettes, just chit-chatting and that. And all of a sudden, Mickey pulls out, looking for some pigeons, he called them. "I got the card for tonight's match. This is a tough one. Who do you think's going to win? Dick the Bruiser, Cowboy Bob Ellis? What do you think? Yeah. What do you think? Want to put some money on this?" Well, again, as I said a moment ago, it was filmed on Monday. Mickey already knew who was going to win. So, these are the stories that, whether it's the personal human story, it's the personal story of recollections of being there, or, the stories of Mickey or Joe or Larry, Sam, or all the wrestlers, who were there, and their memories of wrestling. That's what this book's about.
Yeah. And to answer Herb's question, yes, on that Missouri Athletic Club show, it's actually next Thursday.
Next Thursday, yeah.
On the 7th. Yes, I am actually on that card. So, yeah. So if you're going to be there, I will be there. And I'm excited. I really am. I don't care if it's a Thursday night. Heck, just being in the club and knowing what presence from what I hear from what I hear who's going to be there. Yeah, I'm there. So
It was sold out, and it's actually, the Missouri Athletic Club, for those people who don't know, it's one of the most prestigious athletic clubs in the country. It's how the New York Athletic Club gives the Heisman Trophy? The Missouri Athletic Club hands out the equivalent of the Heisman Trophy for soccer, the best soccer male and female players in the country. They have the big
wow.
So it is a very prestigious organization. And to be there with, a sold out audience, wrestling, Ric Flair will be there. You're gonna have a great time.
Yeah, exactly. So, we keep talking about the book, because, obviously you've had a passion, with gathering, with the story, with the wrestling, and I know that you pitched this idea to a certain individual who's watching, which almost this didn't happen. How much persuading did it kind of take for you to make sure that this book was going to be done?
Well, at first it was like, well, this isn't my genre, and I'm working on another baseball book, but I can't go to those. And we were making another film for PBS, and we had to shut it down with the virus. And part of the problem is getting photos in books these days. Getty Images is buying up every picture and charging you between $500 and $5,000 to use. Yeah. And if you want a book with 500 pictures, think about what that would cost. So, I said, I don't know, can I get the things? And it was like, well, Sam gave it to Larry. Larry gave most of it to Herb Simmons, and Herb said it's there. Larry's Matisek's wife, Pat, had things. I called Bob Costas and asked him what he thought about it. He said, do it. I called the Koppler, Ted Koppler, before he passed away, and his sons, and it was like, please do it, because the Koppler family is what I call two legs of the three-legged stool. They had the chase, they had the television. Sam Muchnick and his stable of wrestlers was the third. And I called my friend Mickey Gargiola's son, Bob, and was like, oh my God, do this. So, all of a sudden, everybody is telling me to do it. Herb showed me how I could get the necessary pictures, memorabilia, the things I love. And, we get awarded for it in this book. And once I really started, and I have my own personal memories, and people would, they'd say, well, what are you working on? And I'd kind of go, maybe a little humbly, wrestling at the Chase. And boom, as I said earlier, 4 words, explosion. And it was these hundreds and hundreds of personal explosions from people that, like, this is going to be big. This is going to be huge. That, just like the Browns, who haven't played a game in 68 years, people are remembering them. They're coming to the events. And, how quickly Joe Holloman leaked in the Post-Dispatch back in June as a lead up to the NWA event at the Chase that this book would be coming out. And all of a sudden, every radio station and television station is like, come on the air, let's talk about this. And you get on the air, and probably just like their lines are just going crazy, the phone lines or the call, the emails in, that there is this passion. And, I always tell a story that it first happened with the Browns book. I was at a big charity party at a person's house, and a guy comes up to me and says, are you the Browns guy? And it's kind of like, yeah, I guess. And he goes, I need to tell you a story. And his eyes started watering up. And his wife walked over and says, is that him? And I'm thinking, what the hell did I do? And I looked at her, and she started welling as her husband starts telling a story about her dad. His dad has dementia, Alzheimer's, and he's in a home. He's been at home for 3 years. And he goes over and visits him throughout the week, but they just sit there quietly watching television and really don't have a lot of conversation. What kind of gift do you give a person like that he doesn't really know? So he said, I gave him your Browns book for Christmas. And he looked at it like he's never looked at a present. And he opened it. And all of a sudden, he started talking to me about, hey, that guy, a picture, points to a picture, names the player, and tells story turns a page, same thing over and over. And he said, every time I go over, he wants to get this book out. And we talk. And it may not be that he may not know I'm his son or not. He says, I don't care because you gave me my dad back. And we're having talks like we hadn't had, in 5, 10, 15 years. And I can't, over half dozen to a dozen times, people have told me this same story. And that's what I want to replicate with Wrestling at the Chase. And, I tell people, not for the personal thing about buying the book for me, buy it for your parents. Bring back your parents, grandparents' memories. Give them these happy thoughts, these happy times. We talked earlier on the show about this bonding and stuff like that. It was special times. And in these kind of strange times, divisive times we live in, these are the memories you want to keep. And even for the city of St. Louis, who's been kicked in the teeth a little bit with certain things going on, this is a time when St. Louis was one of the top cities in America. It was the place. As we said, the Chase was the place. Ask these wrestlers, where was the place? St. Louis. And what was it? It was this program.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I'm just throwing up here a little bit of artwork here. And for those who, if you want to know more about the whole, with the St. Louis Browns Historical Society, there's the website right there, thestlouisbrowns.com. And of course, St. Louis Browns story of a beloved team, which you wrote with this with Bill Borst and I believe was it Will Rogers?
Bill Rogers,
yeah. And then of course the forward by Bob Costas here.
Right.
So that's that's one of the the collaborators of the books that you have here. And then of course a couple other things of your work here with the Incredible Cardinals. This is so now these are basically were the you were basically showcasing kind of the greatest Cardinals in history this year.
I was really pushed after the success of the Browns book. You got to write a book about the Cardinals, and I said, the Cardinal books are a dime a dozen. They're everywhere,
Oh yeah.
And it was like, come on, you're getting awards for the Browns book. Do this one. So I said there is one thing I wanted to do for kids, and it's really important. And it actually is a kids book, but I'll tell you what, it's more for parents and grandparents as well. And it was the men who are drawn on the left field wall. The Cardinal stars who are painted on the left field wall.
Yeah.
I take each of them and tell their story in a special way that rhymes, so it resonates with young kids. And this incredible artwork by Ed Kaler. I mean, I started with pictures. I told them what I wanted the picture to look like, and that's what I was writing this, vignette about. And it is to teach, because I'll tell you what, baseball, is not the gold star it was. I mean, it's sad to say. And young people don't know who a lot of these, Dizzy Dean, Rogers Hornsby. Now, I mean, I've heard, over the years, as I'm signing books, a lot of these kids, I'll talk to them, and I go into schools and I use this book to teach kids about how to write a book, how you start with a story and a theme and, and all this. They don't know who Stan Musial is. And as you said, one of the greatest men to ever play the game. And now Lou Brock and Bob Gibson passing. We got to keep their memories alive. And that's what this book was about.
Oh, yeah. Great. Yeah. I mean, of course, with Stan and, Whitey, of course, with Red there, Ozzy, Dizzy, Gibby, and
they're all there in this book in these really unique caricature drawings. This picture of Stan, you go back to the story and it's about the day he hit 5 moonshots, and there's more to his pictures and all this, or you make it very animated so that the kids. But the thing of it is, I said, parents and grandparents have found this book to be pretty incredible, because the heroes in the book were their heroes, and they can then teach them and spend special time teaching their children and grandchildren who these are the roots of the Cardinal Foundation, the great Cardinal Foundation. And that's why I got my Cardinal shirt on. I was at the game earlier, came back today, but this is the roots of the franchise right here.
Yeah, exactly. And
that's what we're doing with wrestling. Who was Dick the Bruiser? Who was Cowboy Buck? Bob Orton, Cowboy Bob Ellis, Dory Funk, Joe Tangaro, Lou Thez, Pat O'Connor. Who were these men?
Yeah.
We can't forget them.
No. I mean, and that book is definitely meant for that. And like something, this project here has just been really, really, highly talked about. And now, we're gonna, we'll mention a little bit more here on how you can get this book here in a little bit. I think my man Z here had his next question here for you.
We've mentioned the other book about the Wrestling of the Chase that Larry wrote himself.
Right.
Did you have a chance to read that book?
Oh, I read it.
So, was there any features or styles that you changed about yours?
No, not really. I mean, my style is really simple. It's kind of a vignette. You find a picture. A picture can add 400 or 500 words to 1,000 words to your little story. So I have, I'll have a story. I'll go find pictures, or I'll have a picture, and then I'll tell the story from the picture, write it. Larry's was more of a, I wouldn't call them essays, but they were written stories, not that many pictures in it. And we made this book big on purpose. It's an 11 by 11 coffee table book because what we wanted. Well, just look at the picture, the cover itself.
Yeah.
We wanted these pictures to blow at you, to be big, whether it's, looking at old, photos from, wrestling magazines were huge in the old days, just like the Hollywood magazines. You talk about the heels and the faces, where they built their images and all that. I mean, those magazines were big, but I mean, I wanted to take you back to, ringside, just like you were watching on TV with these kind of big pictures. And that's why we took, a bigger than the normal size book for this coffee table. And, the cover, we get a lot of credit and awards for the covers and the quality of the cover and the pages, the paper. It's something that's going to last a long, long time.
Yeah. So, and of course, Herb is in here watching tonight with Herb Simmons, great promoter of SICW. So ask Ed about Marigold Wrestling.
Yeah. Marigold was out of Chicago. It was a predecessor of Wrestling at Chase. And I'll tell you what, Sam Muchnick's daughter, throughout this year and a half of putting this together, I kept asking her, what do you have? What do you have? And she says, I gave a lot to this one archives that I got from them. And the other day, she gave me a whole bunch of Marigold posters that we'll be putting into our film. But the Marigold was a theater, an arena up in Chicago on the north side that had wrestling. And wrestling first came, as we said, Wrestling at the Chase started in May 1959. But in the early 50s, Channel 5 KSDK was the first channel in St. Louis. And what happened was they brought in tapes from the Marigold out of Chicago, and that's what they aired for several years, was Wrestling from the Marigold. And then in the mid 1950s, Channel 5 KSDK created Wrestling from the St. Louis House for 2 years, and they filmed their matches down at Jefferson and Lafayette. And then WTVI over in Belleville, a UHF, if you remember what UHF, that was that funny antenna you had on the back of your television, channel 56.
Wow.
WTVI, they picked up Wrestling from the Marigold. And then eventually WTVI crosses the river and becomes KTVI, that we have today.
Okay.
So Wrestling at the Chase was actually the third iteration of televised wrestling in St. Louis. The Marigold was the first and lasted several years. Wrestling from the St. Louis House on KSDK was the second iteration, but Wrestling at the Chase was the king. I mean, almost 3 decades it stayed around and was loved all across the Midwest. So, and it set the tone for all the others across the country, because Channel 11 was the preeminent independent television station in America.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
And,
we were talking about that and talk about that. Something about Channel 11. I got a wrestling book, but you know who else is in the wrestling book? The Three Stooges, because the two things that made Channel 11 very popular were Wrestling at the Chase and Captain 11 Showboat. You used to have these television shows. Again, remember, you only had 4 channels. After school, you would run home to watch cartoons and the Three Stooges. And the Three Stooges were part of the Channel 11 programming. And then after Wrestling at the Chase, you went to that next great sport, roller derby.
oh,
So
Yes.
we talk about all those: wrestling, roller derby. The Three Stooges are all in the book.
man, if somebody's Saturday night wasn't complete about that, then you're not living, man. I'm telling you. Yeah, the Stooges, wrestling, and roller derby. That would have done it for me as a kid if I would.
Yeah, you never go to sleep.
Yeah. So yeah. So the Chase was recorded on Monday nights,
Right.
but they were first airing on what night of the week?
Well, it did some different days, and they taped it on Mondays for a reason, because, as I said, the Coruscant room was built for these big galas and balls. So on the weekends, they were busy with, all these social events, and they would, put the ring in place, set up the 800 chairs, take it all down, bring in whatever was going to be. So they would tape it generally on a Monday night. What would happen is the wrestlers would come into town for a Friday or Saturday night big event at Kiel Auditorium, and the select wrestlers would stay over for the Chase, and then they would go right back out on the road after the Monday night Wrestling at the Chase. And it was shown generally on Saturday. Sometimes it was shown on Tuesday. Sometimes it was on Wednesdays. It was always re-aired on Sundays, and sometimes, as I said, they would re-air it on other nights. And it was funny, Herb. I was asking him about interviewing him about what was his memories of watching Wrestling at the Chase growing up, and he was talking about how he grew up, and he and his mother would watch Wrestling at the Chase on Wednesday nights. And I was like, Wednesday nights? Because most people will tell you when you say things like that, you're nuts. It was on Saturdays and Sundays, because, probably 80-90% of the time it was on the air, it was Saturday and Sunday. But in its earlier period, they used it to fill in programming at different times in the week. So I went searching, and I said, look here, I found a poster, Wrestling at the Chase, Wednesday nights. There it is. So because I don't want people disclaiming. It's like, when you talk about the Browns, one of my favorite Browns stories was Dizzy Dean in the day he pitched for the Browns. And there's always some old codger who stands and says, "You're an idiot. He pitched for the Cardinals." And I said, "Well, slow down, buddy." September 27, 1947. Dizzy Dean had been out of baseball, for 8 years. He played for the Cardinals for just a few years because he got his toe broke by Luke Averill in the All-Star game. And Dizzy being Dizzy, that doesn't mean anything. So he came back, and when he came back, he threw out his arm. Cardinals released him after 36. He went up and played a few years with the Cubs. But by that time, he's a kind of heavier, huskier guy, and he's announcing for the Cardinals. And as you said earlier, the Browns weren't always very good. And Dizzy told it like it was. He was in enough trouble with the school teachers of St. Louis because he would use terms like, Zarella sluds in the third, and all the kids are coming to school talking about sludding in the third and using his language that, his Arkansas, Ozark language. And they wanted him off the air. And he would tell this pitcher can't hit the side of a barn. My grandma's a better pitcher than him. I could do it. So they kind of said, okay, Dizzy, you do it. So what does Dizzy do? He comes out of the radio television booth, and he just happens to throw a shutout for all his innings in that game. And, he even stretched a single, a given easy single into a double, and slides crazy into second base. And later on in the game, his back starts stiffening up. But, it's going and digging, making sure you got the right stories. Yes, wrestling did happen on these other nights, so as people remember. And then you provide I got posters that show it, advertising out of magazines, newspapers, and there it is. You find it, and you support people's memories.
Oh yeah. But with the chase here, and I know you were part of whenever the NWA came back for their big annual pay-per-view for NWA 73, and of course you're at the press conference there too, right, with Trevor Murdoch, Camille, Tootie Lynn Ramsey was there,
Billy Corgan.
Yeah, Billy Corgan was there, and also there was this huge white bell. And
I should have brought it up to my office. It's downstairs. Yeah, I should have brought it here. Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
I had the from Channel 11. The second time it's been out of their studio, the original bell, and I always bring it with me to events. And we had it there for that night. And I'll tell you what, the fan fest they had Saturday and Sunday morning. You had all the wrestlers in there signing autographs, but guess what everybody wanted to do? They wanted to ring the bell from Wrestling at the Chase. They wanted to be Mickey Gargiola for that moment. And, it's one of these things. I did it the other day. I was at a kind of a preview book event, and, people were ringing. It has its own unique tone. It's kind of like, maybe a Pavlov dog type thing. You hear it and immediately in your head, wrestling, where's the TV? Wrestling at the Chase. It's got that unique sound. It's not like a church bell. It's that, hit it from the side, not the top. Some people want to hit it, and then I got hit from the side. And there it is, the bell from Wrestling at the Chase, the big white bell, Mickey, and throughout all the pictures in the book and everything, there it is. It's this special piece of the legacy that still lives.
Man, yeah. And not only that, just by the sound, but it's sometimes with the cadence of how the bell was rung. It's just kind of like, back in the 70s with WWF and into the 80s in Madison Square Garden, just the way that bell was sounding, even through like the first WrestleMania that WWF had. And, Wrestling at the Chase has that tone. I mean, when you hear that, it takes you back.
It does.
Knowing that you watched all that.
It does.
And just holding on to that piece of history is just awesome in itself.
It's like, there's a certain smell or a certain song. It takes you back in time. The cadence of that bell, you're back in front of a television, an old black and white or early color television. Somebody today, I was at the ball game. Somebody was asking me about Wrestling at the Chase in the book, and they were telling me their memories, how they had a black and white television. And back in the late 50s and early 60s, you could put this kind of like cellophane paper over your television, and all of a sudden you had color TV. I mean, I remember it, but I never thought it was. We had this long dialogue at the ball game today about that. But that's the stuff of why you write these books, because you get these memories. That's what it's about.
Man, cellophane. I never would have thought about that. Cellophane over black and white.
They had this. They sold this, and I remember you'd see it in the back of comic books or magazines. You get this and convert your black and white television, for like $2.98. Send it in, and
wow. Holy cow, man. Whew. Well, we've got so we're gonna talk. You've been showing some pictures about this book, which is awesome, by the way. I'm telling you, if you are a true professional wrestling fan and a fan of Wrestling at the Chase, you really need to get this book. I need to get this book. I have procrastinated. I procrastinated enough. Just seeing a lot
Thursday night. We'll see you Thursday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm gonna make sure I have it tucked away and make sure I'm there to take care of that. We're going to whoops, hold on. I'm cutting everybody off here. My bad. So we're going to look at some pictures here. So this is off the website stowrestlingbook.com, where some of these are pictures. So kind of take us through some of these photos here. Now
that's the Chase Park Plaza. The Park Plaza is the big tower on the left. The Chase Hotel is there on the right. That's at the corner of Kings Highway and Lindo. You're looking at what would be considered the northeast part of Forest Park, just like you were sitting at Fifth Avenue and Central Park South in New York.
Right. Yeah. So if I remember, like where these two black cars are down the bottom left hand corner, I think this is Forest Park Parkway now these days.
That is, it
Yeah.
is really that. Yes.
God, I take this route. God, I don't know how many times I've taken this route. I'm like, gosh, where's the Park Plaza now? Thanks to you, now I kind of know my wits about this picture.
Yep, it sits there on Kings Highway at Lindo.
Oh my goodness! And let's see if this is all right. Now about these photos here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the sports pointers, the wrestling article. Now this one in the middle. Okay, I believe, is that from the St. Louis Wrestling Club?
Yeah, I mean, Sam Muchnick and the Wrestling Club put these out, and they generally sent them to they had a list, the people were buying tickets and coming, and their regulars. And this is what Larry Matisek would start. He really got his start as a young kid. He actually, as a very young high school kid, he would write Sam Muchnick and got so involved and would write stories to Muchnick that Muchnick brought him in and kind of took him under his wing. And these are some of the things that Muchnick would first start producing, and how he then worked his way up, learning the ropes of wrestling through Sam. But these, we have collections and all kinds of stories of these. They appear because, again, these are an instant memory. I have these. And the one that's unique about the one on the right, that's not with the St. Louis Wrestling Club. That's where Larry Matisek, his promotions, when they moved over to Channel 30, after he left wrestling at the Chase in Channel 11 in 1983, and the different wrestlers that went with him, as opposed to the St. Louis Wrestling Club. But so it's, just looking at these inside a book, they have stories of their own on these pages that you can read and go back in time with.
Yeah, my gosh, yeah. On that one on the right, Bruiser or King Kong Brody and Toru Tanaka there.
Yes.
And then featured now Luthez returning home.
Yes.
Yeah. So this was back in August of 1983, about a couple months before Wrestling at the Chase came to an end there. And then, my gosh, on the left, I think it's from 1961, possibly, with Kowalski.
Right, Killer Kowalski, yes.
Yeah, my gosh. And I mean, that there in the middle, once again, I mean, of course, Brody there again, but with Andre holding four.
That's an iconic photo.
That is iconic right there, with Andre just holding four people on him at the same time.
There's the other night I was doing a wrestling show, and there's a different picture of Andre the Giant they had from the book, kind of like you're doing. And they said, it was kind of like, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? And every time I look at Andre the Giant, all I can think of is from The Princess Bride, where he, at the very end, where he looks up to the Princess Buttercup and he goes, "Hey, lady," the stories of Andre the Giant, they're just, I mean, what a gracious person he was, but I mean, one of the best stories is there was the wrestlers would leave Kiel, and they would go a couple blocks north to the hotel where Sam Muchnick's offices were, and also where they would stay, and they would go down into the restaurant, the bar area. And one night, a couple guys were heckling some of the wrestlers and a couple of the lady wrestlers, like the Fabulous Moolah and all that. And Andre was known to have a wine bottle in each hand, just downing them. I mean, he would do, as you saw in the one HBO special, he would, 6-8 bottles of beer and so much alcohol because his body could take it. So he comes walking in, and, it was like these guys, there was a little tension rising in the place, and somebody had come out and said, "Andre, you might want to come in." He just takes those 2 wine bottles out of his hand, bangs them on the bar, breaks them, and says, "Somebody want to rumble?" Those little hotshot smart Alex, they weren't there very long,
Oh no, man!
That reminds me of a Mickey Garagiola story where he would sometimes drive the wrestlers back to the hotel from the Chase. They didn't always stay at the Chase; they stayed over where Muchnick's operations were, and he would find another pigeon, if you will. And he'd find especially some young kid, and he'd kind of like honk and, flash his lights and kind of rev, kind of get the guy kind of little ticked off at him, and he looks over and you see that old man Mickey, and then he maybe give him a movement with his hand or finger perhaps, and like the kid would kind of get out. Oh man, I'm going to take care of you, and get out of his car and look up, and all of a sudden out of the back seat, Gene Kaninsky, Luthez, any of these guys, and this little kid becomes a sheep, gets in his car and takes off as fast as possible, and they'd be sitting there laughing. Just think about it. You got Gene Kaninsky or Dick the Bruiser coming at your car. What are you going to do?
Oh no!
Besides get a new pair of underwear.
Right, exactly. And so imagine what the picture I'm showing here. I think Herb wanted to know how many of these flyers you had to go through.
Herb's just pumping you because he's got them all from Sam Muchnick. They go back. I mean, we went through, I can't tell you how many hundreds, if not thousands of flyers. There's bound books. Sam Muchnick has bound books, by year with all these flyers. But, I mean, and they're all fantastic. And it's just picking out, what's the one that kind of tells the story that's not been told in the book, so you're not being repetitious, and adds new pictures of different wrestlers. It's that's part of doing the book the right way and the research. But and like I said, the one on the right reinforces the story of Larry and Mickey Garagiola's move over to Channel 30 from Channel 11, because when Sam retired, Koppler made a deal with Vince McMahon, and Vince McMahon kind of started taking over wrestling at the Chase for a while, and then that all changed and eventually killed it.
Yeah, I know. Vince was like, yeah, we'll take it over for a while, and then Vince ends up squashing everybody's dreams like he's had for many years. So that's typical Vince fashion. But what about this picture here? With a part one here.
Right. I talked, like as I spoke earlier, there's part one, the three legs of the stool come together. So I have to talk about the three legs of the stool. So the book is kind of broken into parts. And then, like I said, we'll get into, the wrestlers themselves, little biographies of the wrestlers and how they came to be in St. Louis, and, the story of how Sam Muchnick came. But, the three legs of the stool is the Chase Park Plaza, Channel 11, and Sam Muchnick's stable of wrestlers. And there's just so many stories. So we just broke it into context, and this is the first part,
Yeah, I mean, my gosh.
We got Buddy Rogers there, and
the legendary Pat O'Connor.
Right.
Yeah. Oh,
I mean, Pat O'Connor, Luthez. I mean, even as a kid, it's like, how old is Luthez and he's still winning championships? He must be like this super magic fountain of youth guy,
Oh, yeah. Lou was, I think the last time, or at least what I heard, and I had to do my research, but his last match, I believe, was like in 1990, and he was 74 years old.
Right.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, like, and I think Terry Funk is still trying to capture that record, but I don't know if he has or not. But I digress on that. And then what about this picture here? I was like,
Blackjack's going for a ride.
Right, yeah. Is that Lanza?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I almost want to say, is that Ray Stevens? I'm trying.
No, it's Heenan and Dick the Bruiser.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Well, I know Dick was on one side.
Right, Bobby Heenan. Going for a ride.
My goodness.
And when you see that in the book, you got to remember this is like an 11 by 11 picture. So it just jumps at you. I mean, you feel the excitement of what's about to happen.
Oh my gosh, yes. And if they're, like I said, that's why kind of with these fans that would be so close to ringside, I mean, you didn't want to get thrown, because I'm sure there's been instances, to where guys that actually got thrown out of the ring and actually run somebody's lap in the front row.
Going back to Mickey Garagiola, under Sam's rules, you weren't supposed to be out of the ring. He didn't believe in that. wrestling's about being in the ring. But there would be instances, and especially if you were a star, and there's a couple really good tales about, guys thinking we're going to get fired because we went out of the ring, and, how you worked it with Sam. But there was one famous Mickey Giorgiola quip one day. The guys kind of came out of the ring, and he said, "Oh my God, if this table here takes one more hit, it's going to have more than Stan Musial." And Musial had over 3,000, right on the air, just came out.
Wow. Oh my.
So
man.
Lou Thesz's last match was December 26, 1990 in Japan.
Right. Yeah. So at the age of 74, I believe.
Correct. 74.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Woo.
Well, I mean, it's, and you got to look at, as we spoke at the very beginning, the athleticism of these matches and what it takes to even perform these moves. And, you're dealing with another body in the weight. It is an unbelievable, I think, unappreciated athleticism. I think it was more appreciated in the older days than it is today. And, studying all these different wrestlers that we speak of and, their backgrounds, that, these were special athletes and, from other sports.
Yeah, absolutely. These guys were one of a kind. These guys were tough as nails. I mean, my gosh, I would not even begin to fathom, what they're, how they were trained in wrestling school. I mean, my gosh, probably about the most recent, most old school type of story I could think of is, to try to deter guys from getting into business, with Hogan getting in on his first training session with Hiro Matsuda, and Matsuda broke his ankle. He come back for 6. He had to wait for 6 weeks to heal up, and he came right back. So, God, who would have thought? And then, of course, you also had like Vern Gagne back in up in AWA, when Steve will tell you about how the guys that have to carry one wrestler up like multiple flights of stairs, and then take their, my God, can you imagine the regimen these guys had? It's just,
you think about the weight of these guys too. On top of it, as you well know, even when how many times you throw them off you, think of that weight that you're throwing off. Or when they come, I can only imagine what it was like to have Andre the Giant Pinion lay on you. 500 pounds, but that's what it is. It's athleticism, and that's got to be appreciated.
Yeah. So I think Z's got another question here for you.
Sure.
So from the work you've done in the past with baseball in St. Louis and the history of the St. Louis Brown, you've written books first, and then we've seen documentary films come. Can we see something of the same for the Wrestling of the Chase?
Oh, absolutely. We've been we've already been filming for this book. Before the book's out, we were already filming. The same thing happened on the other books and movies I did.
Nice.
So we've we have the luxury of having a tremendous library of volumes of Wrestling at the Chase itself, the program to utilize. We have gone back, next week, we're going to film the Koppler family in the Coruscant room of the Chase Park Plaza, kind of like, and I don't know, we're working on it, like from the famous play Hamilton, that's, of the last several years. There's that famous song, "This is the room where it happened. This is the room," that hip hop. And that comes to my mind that we need to play that in when we're interviewing the Koppler family, because the Coruscant room, this is the room where it happened. This is the room, and we've been up on the hill with Mickey. We've done Larry Matisek's wife an interview. We've done a lot of fans and their memories of what they, their special story and special memory. So we're gathering them for segments of this film. So we're looking early 2022. Our target date is to premiere it March 2022. It may be delayed, but everything these days is delayed. So we're going for March 2022, but we are well underway. Got a fabulous team from PBS. As I said, we won Emmy awards with this team, and I wouldn't do it with anybody else. Kara Vanager is a great producer and director to work with me, and just happy and delighted about that. So look for it. You can get the films. You can go out to the 9 PBS network and pull them up. Just type in St. Louis Browns. You'll see 2 films, and soon you'll see a film called Wrestling at the Chase. It was something that once they heard I was going to do this book, it was like immediately, we got to do this, film. We've always wanted
awesome.
We need to tell. I mean, Channel 11 has done some nice work. They did a look back at Wrestling at the Chase with Larry Matisek about a decade ago, or maybe it's longer than that, but and it was nice. But Channel 11, KPLR TV, has handed over to me all their raw footage of everything they have, and along with the bell. So I think it's going to be a premier legacy piece, just like the others.
Nice.
I'm excited to see that. I really am. Like,
I think
you have me more pumped for this book than you know.
Well, I think that's what I think. And I'm not saying it because I wrote it or anything. I mean, I think these are pieces of history, as I said, that shouldn't be forgotten. These are special times. It's going to be, great Christmas present. I think you give it to people and you'll just watch their eyes light up, and they'll tell you a story as soon as they get it. I mean, I got a really nice note from 2 of the Copper boys, a really great note from the Gargiola family just the other day, because people were seeing it for the first time. And, I can't wait to have, 500 people next week, all with a copy of the book and watching our partner here wrestle up in the ring. And, I don't know if he's going to go woo or anything. I don't know if he's got, his feather thing to wear or what he's going to do. But
I don't do feathers, my thing. I'll do neon, but I won't do feathers. So
no bolas.
Yep. Yeah.
But, I mean, I just is people are starting to hear about the book. I mean, yesterday we were on KMOX radio, and they just said we can't stop. The phones are going crazy. The emails coming in crazy. Everybody wants to talk about Wrestling at the Chase and the memories.
Yeah. But I digress when you're talking about your 2 documentaries, which, by the way, award-winning documentaries over the St. Louis Browns, with the St. Louis Browns, the team baseball forgot, winner of 2 Clio Awards and a Telly Award, and nominated for a regional Emmy Award. Also,
and 1 Emmy Award.
1 Emmy Award, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. And then, of course, a baseball legacy. Fans remember the St. Louis Browns, and of course, receiving honors for that.
Yes.
With an Emmy there, but they
were both picked for the prestigious National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown Film Festival. So.
Right, exactly. And we did post links of where you can find on pbs.org with these documentaries. If you're a baseball lover, baseball historian, you need to go see these. Take the time out, and just some great work. They're Emmy Award documentaries. Definitely go see that. Also, going back to when you're talking about the with the Wrestling at the Chase documentary, you're going to interview, or at least interview some of these guys.
Right.
The Night Train, Gary Jackson, was interviewed.
Yeah, great interview, great story, great piece of film.
Yeah. So Gary's been in the business since '84. He's definitely done his time up in different promotions.
And part of his story is, how did he become interested in wrestling? And kind of like, I wouldn't say sneaking in, but I'll say sneaking into the Chase when he was too young to get in, and the different wrestlers, and we'll let him tell the story in the film, how they took him under his wing, and kind of that's where he got his start. And very special story, very special part of the film.
Wow. Yeah. Also, just real quick here, going back to, because we talked about these big shows at the Belclair Fairgrounds, especially coming up at the end of this month. Apparently, Luthez was a ref for special guest referee in SICW at the 87 Belclair Fairgrounds event.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. This isn't any, this is a big deal that, what happens at that of the fairgrounds over there in Belleville. It's got history of its own.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I said, October is a big month. If you're a big wrestling fanatic here in St. Louis and you have access to either be part of the shows or watch these shows, you're definitely going to watch something special for sure. So I think my final question here is, after you completed writing this book, is from what I hear is that you're still being, after you completed this book, you're still being sent memorabilia your way.
I still get, it's been 5 years. People still give me Browns memorabilia and things, which is great because I put it into the Browns fan club exhibits and things, but we're constantly getting things. Like I said, last Friday, I got a huge box of probably 400 or 500 pictures, and I can't tell you how many hundreds of letters from Sam Muchnick, and a lot of film that, a year over the last year and a half, when I kept talking to his daughter, she didn't know she had it, and then she was doing some remodeling last month and found this box, and lo and behold, that happens all the time. It's amazing. When I was doing the Browns book, people would call me up and bring over things. And that happened, even in wrestling at the Chase, once the word got out. A lot of those little newspaper type articles that you sent, a lot of people brought those. They brought their tickets to wrestling at the Chase to show me, or letters from Sam Muchnick. One guy had a St. Louis Wrestling Club ashtray, a special ashtray that, it's in the book. You'd find wrestling at the Chase or Luthez glasses, from the old days when, it's just, how you go into stores and you got all this Cardinal stuff, cups and glasses. Well, they used to do that big time with this program and St. Louis wrestling, in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And so all this memorabilia started flowing, and it flowed into the book. But you always find people who find things because it sparks a memory when they read the book or see the movie, and they bring you more. So, people out there, they've got something special. Well, we're still making a movie, and you never know, it could make it into the movie.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. So after completing this book with this Wrestling That's a Chase, and as far as the look back at the era, I mean, do you have a different look? Do you have a different outlook on the sport of professional wrestling? And if so, how would you describe it?
Well, I think, I think what we would call the period that this book is about, it was the golden years of wrestling. And when I say golden, it was a special time. Today there's way more wrestling programs on television because of cable all over the country and all over the place. I had to figure out how to close this chapter of wrestling in the book. That Sam retires, as we spoke earlier. Larry eventually goes with Mickey to Channel 30, starts his own promotions. Then he would go and work for Vince for a while. Vince took this and ran with it in this direction. And that's the way it went. And that's it was tied partly to our society. Like I had talked about the Roaring 20s, and I talked about, Sam Muchnick creating this thing just like Pete Rozelle created the NFL. McMahon ran with it. But it's interesting how when you talk to people or you interview them, and especially some of these older wrestlers, not to get into name, ask them, do you watch WWE today? It's not the same, And a lot of it is like, you would ask a Bob Gibson, the great pitcher of the Cardinals, or, one of my good friends before he passed away last year, Don Larson, the Yankees, perfect game pitcher. He also pitched for the St. Louis Browns. Do you watch baseball today? It's kind of like a generation type thing that it's not the same as when I played, or it's not the same game I watched growing up. And I think you see some of that with wrestling today. But yet, these millennials and these younger kids, they're used to video games. They're used to this sort of kind of action spiel and all this. And they resonate to today. And they would probably look at the wrestling at the Chase and call it boring, like the millennials call baseball boring, as it's played. So it's a generational thing, I think. And that's how I kind of took it.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I can do that.
Yeah, definitely can, definitely can understand on that view and outtake of that as well. But I want to let everybody know that this book, if you are wanting to get it now, I just want to be clarifying on this because we've been advertising at sicw.org to order the book. But it almost seemed like it was a pre-order. So, I mean, can they still go to that website?
You can still go there and get it. If you're out of town, you can get it any bookstore, any online venue, if that works for you. You can get it through the SICW still. We'll take it because some people, I've signed so many books, to Maine, Montana, Idaho, where they have come through the SICW website to get the book. And, I'll personalize every single one of them to however it wants to be. And we'll get it out to you within a day or two of it order coming in. So that's a way, to get your own personal, private, special copy.
How much is the book?
You order through a store online. I can't personalize it, but this way, if you're a collector, you want something, for a special Christmas gift or birthday, we can do it that way.
Yeah. I believe Z was asking how much the book was. I believe it retails for $39.95.
$39.95, and then whatever the tax is in that area where you buy it.
Right.
And it's, you'll see the value, the quality of the paper, the quality of the cover when you see the books that we've produced. The Browns, the baseball in St. Louis, all of them. We get called out. I was speaking at Cooperstown one time. I've spoken up there a couple times, and this one guy from New York was up there in the audience, and he came up and says, "Where do you get these books from? I've never seen books of this quality." And I got to compliment Reedy Press, our publisher, and the company that they get the printing from. It's not like some of these books that are the paper's not going to last. This book's going to last you if you're a wrestling lifer. This will take care of you.
Oh yeah.
What's funny about this is when Rick told me that we were going to have you on here this week, I'm like, oh, I know that name from somewhere. I was at my grandmother's again the other day, and she has a beauty shop, and my grandfather's a big baseball fan. I wasn't a baseball fan, so I never got into it. Well, I'm like, I know this name, and I went into the beauty shop, and there's your book on the Browns in the beauty shop. So if that book has any quality to this one, we already know how well the book's going to be.
I go into all these books kind of keeping your fingers crossed, kind of humble, kind of quiet, because it's all humbling, these awards, this recognition, being in the paper or radio and all, being on your show and getting to talk to so many people. But you also got to, what's your audience want? Do they want to accept? And, and you got to make it special because, I'll be the first when you ask, what does it cost? I worry about, giving people their money's worth. It's not just write something and throw it out there. I want it to be worth every penny that you pay for. And, I mean, all I can say when I saw the book was, wow, after experiencing the other books and, what it took to make them very popular. If I grew up, this will relive my memories. and my favorite wrestler. So, if I were to ask you, if you look back in this time, I know you're a little younger, who would you think your parents or you would be the wrestlers that you would were your man?
I mean, me, it's Ric Flair. My dad's Davey Boy Smith, or no, Chief Jay Strongbow was my dad's favorite wrestler. Mine is Ric Flair. I was a diehard Ric Flair fan, big Hogan fan. Piper, I obviously said, Cowboy Bob Orton Jr. And then once I got older, it became like guys like Harley Race, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, Lou Thez, because I got to go back and look at their stuff, and those guys were awesome.
Oh yeah, for me, it was Hogan when I first got in, and then I merged into watching all the Georgia territory, which I became more of the NWA drifted down southeast after Muchnick was done. So I was watching a lot of the World Championship Wrestling off of WTBS, and then of course my dad, though, he was really a big fan of Dick the Bruiser, and it was really special. When we and my dad actually got down to Starrcade 90 when we watched Flair and the Black Scorpion and Sting, and Dick the Bruiser was a special guest referee. I mean, he was tickled to death about that.
The Black Scorpion.
Well, that's why, like I said, I think that's generational. And as I said earlier, there's the 3 time frames, with Thez and O'Connor, and then comes Bruiser. I mean, for me, there was always something about Dick the Bruiser, especially when he did pop out of the ring, ran over, took the guy's beer, poured it over his head, went, and then ran back in the ring, Those are the moments you loved.
And see, I just started getting into his stuff, like actually digging into his history and finding videos and movies and stuff on him. So that's what I love about wrestling is, I come from like the 90s era of wrestling and forward. But just like baseball for other people, it's that past history then where they're going in the future. That's what keeps me addicted to wrestling.
Well, it's how did it get to the sport you're at now? You got to learn that.
Right.
And that's what I try to do, create that history.
Yeah, I can't wait to have that book. I'm totally buying that book for myself for Christmas.
Yeah. And I know that when I come down to the Missouri Athletic Club next Thursday, I know that I will have money in hand. I will be buying the book, and Ed will be so graciously to sign it for me. Say, "Too rough cut, Rick Ruby, the best co-host on any podcast I've been on." It's yours truly.
Yep. I'll start running it now because I'll need all that time to have it written.
Right. Oh shoot! But also, you're gonna have like say your appearance is going to start next week. Now I believe the book is already out, or getting ready to come out.
It just came in at the end of last week and is being distributed to the stores and the online markets. So some stores have it, and some it's still on the way. Yeah. So your appearance is going to be starting next week, like the next Wednesday, at the West End Grill and Pub, down off of North Boyle in St. Louis, where just around the corner from the Chase. Just
around the corner from the Chase, with Cowboy Bob Orton Jr. being there, and then of course, if you're at that private event, you'll get a chance to see Ed there as well. You're also got a couple signings here also on Saturday, October 9th, with at the Edwardsville City Park. And starting at 11 o'clock, it's free and open to the public. And if you're going to be part of that big October 9th show down at the Swansea Firehouse, you're going to be there too.
Right. So, and then we'll be over at Belleville on the 30th as well.
Yeah. Nice. So you're going to get around. So you got a few more here. You've also got some in November. And trust me when I say, because I'm gonna buy this book, I'm gonna take a look at it, and I know I'm gonna be a big fan. I know it's gonna be sitting behind me on my window ledge here, or maybe even put it right next here so I can have something, so my printer can hold up something here. Right. Or I want to make sure everybody gets a good look at this book. But
like I said, you keep watching STL Wrestling Book, and we're filling in all kinds of dates because a lot of these places wanted to get a copy, and then we'll set the dates. And the Christmas coming up, we're setting up a lot of book signings for that. And as I said, there's two events. The city of Florissant will have Bob Orton Day, November 4th. That's not yet out on the line because we just finalized that tonight. And then next week or so, we'll be announcing this special early December match where we also induct Sam Muchnick, Larry Matysek, and Mickey Garagiola into the St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame. And we bring in, I think you're going to see some big name men who performed at Wrestling at the Chase. I just can't announce that yet because it's not finalized.
Exactly. Yeah.
But we'll pass that word on to you, and you can, send it out to your watchers. And then, when we get close to having a film, maybe we'll come back and talk about what to look for the film too.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I just if you're going to put out a documentary, now I'm looking to see where it's going to air. I mean, if it
air on PBS.
Yeah, I was going to say if it's going to air on PBS, that's going to be quite interesting, and I definitely want the word to get out for that as well, man. But I'll tell you what, it's been a solid packed over an hour and 45 minutes. I know we've shot a lot of ammunition at you, man. But I mean, you've been really, really busy this week with making all these appearances and everything else. But man, I can't tell you how gracious I am and how, I want to thank you very, very much for taking all this time out for our audience, for our listeners. And I want to make sure that everybody knows about this book, because if you're serious like I am in this wrestling business, and if you're a historian for about the greatest era ever in professional wrestling, and I will say it, and I'll hold it to any other territory, but I'm pretty sure that this book is going to do it well justice. When I definitely get my hands on that. So,
I think it's humbly said, I appreciate you giving me all this opportunity, and we got to talk about the wrestling, the Browns, baseball. But when I turned it in, I just felt really good about it. And then when I saw it, I was pretty blown away. It explodes at you. And, these pictures of the opulence of the Chase, what the city was like, Channel 11 coming on, what was television, and then the stories, the personal stories are the things that, sure, that we have the stories of all the wrestlers, the men, the women, but the people's memories are the best. And,
right.
There's hundreds of thousands more that aren't in the book. And those are the people watching your show and who are going to buy the book.
Yeah. And, and Herb said it earlier, to thank you for helping keeping these memories alive by making this publication. And,
they shouldn't be forgotten. It should not be. These are golden moments, as I said earlier, these are things that your parents can be rewarded with, bringing back these memories when you were a kid with them watching it. We can look back at the city of St. Louis and say, this was a golden moment, and this was a star that shone on St. Louis for 3 decades. I mean, think about that. 3 decades it crossed. 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s.
Yeah. So technically, yeah. I mean, even though it did start in 59, I mean, it's still in the 50s decade. I mean, it was most of 59. I mean, why not? We can just say it's spanned in 4 decades. I mean,
yeah, you could. So, I mean, it's never forget it. You learn from the past.
Right, exactly. And definitely, this is a book to be treasured. This coffee table style book. Man, I just can't wait for that either. So if you're going to be on October 30th, and I sure hope you're going to have copies still left, because maybe Z-Miz gets down there and buys that book, or he may just forget it. I'll just pay the shipping and the tax. I'll just have it shipped out to me now,
Yeah.
So, but definitely want to get your hands on this book. Go to sicw.org. Also STLWrestlingBook.com will also have it as well. And of course, you'll have your other outlets, but whatever you do, find a way to get your hands on this book. And Ed, did you have any other comments or anything else you'd like to say, Nate?
I'd just like to say thank you. Just say thank you to both of you. This is very humbling and meaningful to sit and talk about the history. To just, from my perspective, I appreciate your guys' passion and, your just your knowledge, and just watching you get excited about the things we talk about. That's as a historian and a researcher, that's the stuff I take in to create my stories, and it's just very appreciative to watch you all and what you do with your program.
Thank you.
Well,
that's humbling to us.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, we got you to thank for doing for putting the work in and doing something spectacular, and still going to continue to do work on this documentary that's going to get released next year. So, I mean, hey, we send our thanks to you again for continuing to work on this. Z, any thoughts for you for Mr. Wheatley before we head on out?
I mean, I appreciate it too, because as I'm a younger guy, just in his 30s, still loving professional wrestling, loving the old stuff, and now have 4 children of my own that I'm passing on that love of wrestling, and we do a lot of things. I do thank you so much for everything you do for us. And may I add, maybe the next wrestling book could be about SICW and Herb's stories, because man, that man.
Yeah, we got some other things coming in. I mean, I think, as you said, people are continuing to bring things that one project leads into another, and
right.
I don't think we're done with this project. There are more stories to tell.
Oh yeah, I guess I should have added this on here real quick. I forgot about the. I don't know why I forgot about this page, but technically SICW is in this book a little bit. And of course, you see
that's awesome.
Yeah, you see Gary Jackson in there. You see superstar Steve Fender, Billy McNeil, Attila Khan, Chris Hargis, and the guy in the middle, over to the far left, my trainer, the son of the South, Frankie D. That's the guy who taught me a lot of my abilities here. Of course, the ambassador Sean Vincent, and of course, Curtis Wild and Wildfire and Flash Flanagan. A lot of these guys are stables in SICW. So yeah,
I think it was important. You don't just say, "Oh, the program ended, it's over." You have to say, "So, if this town was enamored with wrestling for 30 years, what did they do?" They went to places like SICW or South Broadway, but they have different styles. But it's the SICW that's keeping this memories, this style of wrestling at the Chase in play, and that's how we continue, because when there wasn't a program on television, it still was here, and people still flocked to it. As you can see, we'll talk about thousands being down at Belleville at the Belclair Fairgrounds. It's because of this history.
Right. Exactly.
Amen to that.
Yep. And hey, as we keep progressing on, there's more pages to be written, because we want to keep the good tradition of professional wrestling in St. Louis and keep it strong. I mean, these guys are hard act to follow, but we can write our own chapters and still gain respectability.
Well, as I said earlier, it's generational. You're playing to a new audience that expects different than what was in the past.
Right.
And you're providing that entertainment and sport. So it's to me, it's just generational transition.
Yep, exactly. Well, Ed, and once again, I thank you very much for being here. Me and Z are just really excited, for this episode. And for everybody, next week, we may or may not have anything. If we have something, we're going to come at you with a surprise episode. If we don't, we just may take a week off. But just know that if we do an episode, it won't be live. But you're more than welcome to watch and listen and, of course, comment, because comments make everything here regarding with our broadcast. So, Ed, thank you very much.
Thank you much. We'll see you next week, and we'll see Z down in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, can't wait,
guys. It's been episode 52 with the great author of Wrestling at the Chase, Ed Wheatley, for Rough Cut Rick Ruby and Z-Miz. We will see you guys possibly next week. Take care.
Thanks again for everybody tuning in to tonight's episode of the Falls Count Everywhere podcast. Don't forget our friends at the following:
the Searcher and Hide podcast, and Outside the Ring STL. The Falls Count Everywhere podcast is an LTX Enterprises production.